what's going on? Thank you so much for checking out the video and welcome to Keeping It Real Fishing. Gonna be two parts to this video, guys. There's gonna be a quick on the water part here. I just want to give you a real brief synopsis. My videos tend to go a long time, and if you just want to get your information and go, I just want to tell you, at least in my opinion, what you need to know about this reel and if it's worth your money. Second part of the video, and I'll put a little time, let's say right there. If you go to that point in the video, that's going to take you to the tabletop. Now, just a little heads up, the tabletop was actually from 2 years ago, and that's an unboxing of the reel when it was completely new. And on the tabletop, I go into the parts, the mechanics, the spool, the bearings. You know, just we generally take it apart, take a look at things, see how it works, reassembly, stuff like that. But here, out on the water, guys, let me just give you the once-over on the Cardiff. I've been fishing it for the past 2 years in the capacity of a 300 size reel. This is the 301A, and my application is big baits for hopefully big bass. So let me just tell you a little bit about it. Okay guys, so the Cardiff comes in 3 flavors or sizes. 200 size, a 300 size, and a 400 size. And anything that has a 1 at the end, say 201, 301, 401, that means it's the lefty. You'll notice that these are the 301A and the 401As. Well, there was actually one before it that didn't have the A, and that was the previous generation, the one that was before these, like 17 years ago. I don't think they ran that one as long. They pretty quickly retooled that one and came out with this one that they've ran with, you know, all these years. So what makes the Cardiff special? Why do people talk about it? Why is it such a popular reel? Basically, guys, the formula is it's proven to be, over all these years, right? We got a huge sample size, thousands and thousands of people using it all across the country for whether it's muskie, big bass, you know, whatever it is. Lots of people are using it, and generally it's a very reliable reel. It's not high-end, it's not super refined, it's not super smooth, but for so many of us, that's not that important. You're not going to you know, catch a fish on a high-end reel that you're going to miss on this. This essentially gets the job done and gives you Shimano quality at a very attractive price point. These things are usually in the $100 range. I think retails about $120. I actually scored this one on eBay. I want to say it was about $85 shipped, somewhere around there. And it's just a great deal. One of the things that I noticed years ago, and I think I say this in the tabletop as well, some pretty famous swim bait fishermen, Paul Bailey and Matt Newman of the Big Bait Posse, and these are some kind of OG West Coast guys, they elect to use this. And even now, if you see any of the videos that Matt or Paul will upload, you're going to see them slinging this. They choose to. One of the reasons is, and they alluded to this, is how light it is. For a 300 size reel, and all the reels, the 200 and the 400, are extremely lightweight for kind of largish round reels. This one here, the 300 size, comes in at 9 ounces flat. That's really lightweight. These are die cast reels. They're not machined, there's not forging or anything like that, so that makes them very lightweight. Sometimes people are scared of die cast. They associate that with kind of being cheap, but again, guys, the sample size plays out. Thousands and thousands of people have been using these things for over a decade, well over a decade, and you know, they're rigid, they stay together, everything stays aligned, and they just don't have that many problems. I think that's why Shimano has not changed it in all these years, because they don't get many returns, they don't get a lot of complaints. It just does what it's supposed to do. Taking a quick walk around the reel, guys, it's extremely ergonomic. It's very, very curvy, and it really is amazing how small it is. I would think that, you know, people often tout trying to downsize a reel. Well, this one is really small. I have it here on a swim bait rod. This happens to be from Lowdown Customs, and this, man, it's like, it's a round reel, but it just really disappears into the hand. It is super, super comfortable because of the fact that this side plate here, the side that you grab, see how that barely overhangs? Really compact, and what does overhang is very contoured. I'm going to show you at the tabletop of one of my other reels, which is at the other end. It's a Daiwa Yoga, which is a real high-end reel. It's a beautiful reel, but the edges here are a little bit sharp, and it just doesn't feel nearly as comfortable in hand as the the cheap Cardiff does. Let's talk performance, guys. Casting is very good, but casting, you know, really kind of, guys, is one part the reel, and it's largely the rod and the lure that you're matching to it. So, like for instance, today I had a lunker punker on here on this slow taper rod, and it cast a ridiculously far distance. so far. I've had this reel on some of my other rods that don't load quite as well, and you don't get the distance. So it's something to always keep in mind, guys, is yes, there is casting attributes of the reel, namely the quality of the bearings and, you know, how fast that spool could speed up. But something like this here, you're not using lightweight stuff, you're going to be using heavy things. I think your real casting performance is going to lie here in your rod choice. But just know that if you have it mated properly to a good rod that loads deep, and if you have something of the right weight on there, the right weight range of your rod, you can freaking bomb things. The reel will give it to you if you got everything else in place, man. Ridiculously far casts. What else, guys? We have rubber knobs here on the side. These are nice. They're not slippery when wet. They're pretty grippy. It's a short-ish handle. I want to say that's like an 80 or an 85 mil, shortish by today's standards. Again, nothing's changed on this in 16 years. You have your drag star there, it doesn't click or anything, but the drag, I found it to be pretty smooth. But truth be told, guys, using this again for swim baits, I generally have it locked down, and when I get those big fish, I'm not playing them, I'm trying to get it in as fast as possible. So I haven't really had anybody test the drag. One other thing, guys, this isn't something that you're probably ever going to mess with on the water, and we're going to talk about it more, and I'm going to break it down with you at the tabletop, but I'll just throw it out here, this way you have it as part of the once over. To adjust the brakes, you can't get in here. This does use the Shimano VBS system, the variable brake system. This is the older one, it's not the current SVS system. The older VBS, where you just have those 6 pins and you kind of push them out or push them in depending on how much braking power you want. But unlike just about every other reel, you can't get to them. This doesn't unscrew, this doesn't slide down. They're in here. The only way to get to them is actually to disassemble the reel entirely. And this is a sticking point. For a couple of years I wanted to just kind of mess around because it's economical. I was like, yeah, let me try one of those Cardiffs. But every time I was like, man, you can't get to the brakes. I was like, that's like seems like a real concession to me. That's probably why it's so cheap. Let me just say this, guys, it doesn't really matter. Coming back to it now, I fished Shimano for a number of years, and you guys who have Shimano, you probably know. Probably 90% of the time, if not more, you're leaving your reel on 2 brakes, right? Unless you have something light, which you're not going to have on the 300 size Cardiff here. If you're throwing something light though, you're going to bump it up to that 3rd brake, or maybe if you have that tailwind, you got something really heavy, you go down to 1, but I think almost all of us just kind of set and forget it at 2 brakes. And so that's really the thing. You don't have to get into adjust it. I haven't changed it. This has been at 2 since I got it. I was open to changing it. I was like, well, if I have to, I have to. I haven't. In 2 years of usage, it stayed at 2 pins, and I don't hardly have any overruns. And if I do, it's, you know, something getting caught up. It's no fault of the reel. But I just want to mention that, guys, you can't just get in there. On the flip side, it is probably the easiest reel to do a full disassembly of any reel. You don't have to take off this nut, you don't have to take off your drag star, your handle, you don't have to take off any of that. All you have are 3 these little knurled screws there. You stick a little coin in them, they're even slotted. You loosen those, this whole assembly pops off, and then that's it. You could take out the spool, and on the spool you have your VBS. So it's really not that hard to do, but you do have to kind of do a true disassembly. You don't just have something swinging down. But on the flip side, when it is time to maintain it, you don't have to mess with any of this stuff here. You can get this apart in 20 seconds and have access if you want to clean your bearings and oil them and everything else. It is screaming fast to take the whole reel apart. So I just figured I'd mention that as well, guys. And guys, I think that's pretty much it. All in all, I've been very happy with the Cardiff. Oh, one other thing, guys, gear ratio, and I'm going to talk about this at the tabletop, but let's just get it out of the way. It comes in but 1 gear ratio. It's a 5:3 to 1. A lot of people use this for Huddlestons and big soft plastics that they want to stay honest and not go too fast, and they're looking for a slow ratio to aid them in that. 5:3 to 1, it's the only ratio, regardless of what you get, if you get the 200, the 300, or the 400. So it is a slower reel, it is more of a power reel, and that's the capacity that I've always used it in, is my larger soft plastic swim baits that I purposely want to go slow on. Can you use it faster? Absolutely. Today I was kind of beating myself up, but I had a lunker punker on here for a while. That was a lot of work, man. It's not where it wants to be, but like any reel, guys, if you don't have a lot of money, if you just want to get something, you could always make it work. You can always speed up and slow down if this is going to be like your first big bait reel. But just understand that 5:3 to 1 really kind of wants to live in a slower place for that slow retrieve. So that's pretty much it, guys. That's the overview of the Cardiff. I totally recommend it. I haven't had any issues with mine. I generally don't hear about people having issues. It's been very reliable. Again, guys, been out there so long. For what it's worth, I like it's not that it's throwback style, but I like the fact that it hasn't changed in all these years. I like the look of it. Looks like it means all business, and yeah, man, it's a great reel. So if you guys want to hang out, we got the full tabletop coming up next. We're going to dive in, take it apart, just more nitty gritty if you're into that kind of thing. But otherwise, guys, if you're on the fence for what they cost, I totally recommend getting a Cardiff. I think you'll really enjoy it. Hey everybody, what's going on? Thank you so much for checking out the video, and welcome to Keeping It Real Fishing. I got a new reel that I'd like to show you here today, guys. It's very much a throwback, but still a current reel. This is from Shimano. We're looking at the Cardiff 301A. We're going to be doing a tabletop here first, everybody. As you can see, it's brand new. I haven't put any line on it yet, and I just wanted to give you a walk around here in the unspooled state. Just show you physically what's going on, show you some of the basics of the mechanics, the internals, and just some of the stuff you may be wondering if you've never had a chance to handle one of these, although this is pretty common. I see this in like Bass Pros and Cabela's and stuff like that. My application is big baits and swim baits for large bass. That's what I like to try to target. And yeah, I've always been interested in this reel. I have a couple other higher end round reels, and this is very much at the other end of the spectrum, but I always heard a lot of good stuff about it, and I finally picked one up. So I'd just like to go over with you guys here at the tabletop. Then we're going to transition to the water, and after I'd had some time with it, I'm going to report back to you how my experience has been with this reel. So without further ado, let's take a closer look at the Shimano Cardiff. Let's start by taking a quick look at the box here, guys, just the general specs. Right here, interesting thing about this reel, it only comes in one gear ratio, and this is irrespective of what size you get. This comes in a 200 size, a 300, which is what I have obviously, and there's also a 400 size. They all come with the same gear ratio. It's a 5.8 to 1, and a quick look on Shimano's site told me that that was equating to about 22 to 24 inches per turn. So this is definitely a slower ratio reel. A lot of guys like it for that reason. It's a very popular reel with swimbait fishermen for Huddlestons and some other large baits that they want to keep slow, kind of to keep them honest and keep them at that slow retrieve. But like I said, no higher gear ratios are offered, so if you're looking for something fast, this is not going to be the one to do it, unless you wanted to keep up with that quick retrieve by your own hand. 4 anti-rust stainless steel bearings. I like the fact that they're anti-rust bearings, and 1 anti-rust roller bearing. Then you guys got some of the basics. The super stopper system, the variable brake system, that's taken it back. Shimano now has the SVS. Now this is the VBS system, the older one that we all know from Corrados and Chronarchs of yesteryear. Got your paddle knobs. They don't mention it, but it uses that Septon finish rubber. They've been using on their stuff forever. It's a real grippy rubber. It's nice. Handles well in wet conditions. Quickfire 2 clutch. That's basic stuff. One piece die-cast aluminum frame. So it's a die-cast reel. It's not a high-end reel. It's not a machined reel. And a precision aluminum spool. Really lightweight. Comes in at 9 ounces. On other sites, I actually listed at 8.9, but figure about 9 ounces. And there's your line capacities. They list it for 12 and 14, although I don't know too many people that are going to buy a 300 series reel and put that on it. Although, for saltwater guys, for inshore guys, you may look at that 12 and not think about it in terms of plastic lines, like your monos or copolymers or fluoros. You may look at that in terms of braid equivalent and realize that you can put 40 or 50 pound braid and you can put over 200 yards on it. So if you're using this for some deep water jigging or something like that, it's a very viable option. So that's pretty much it, guys. Quick look inside. Same stuff as we've always gotten. You have your exploded sheet here, so if you're looking to do any maintenance or if something goes on you and you're comfortable taking it apart, you can identify the part. Here you have your basic instructions and warranty for the reel, and you also get one of these little tools. This is sized for the nut on the handle. The other end here is also used to take off these screws on the side, which we'll get to in just a minute. And it also has, if we zoom in or focus here, additional brake tabs. I've never worn down or even attempted to see anywhere on any of the brakes on my other Shimano reels that use a VBS system, but they always, or they almost always give you another set, most of the reels, so it's in there should anything happen. Alright guys, so that's pretty much it for the box. Let's take a closer look. Okay, so there it is, the Cardiff. And right off the bat, you know, a lot of you watching this, it's very well could be a lot of people who own this reel who are watching. And I probably can't tell you anything you don't already know. This isn't going to be in depth. This is just a general overview for anybody who's in the market and just wants to get a better sense. I did a quick look around here on YouTube and I saw a couple videos, but nothing really comprehensive, at least not the way I get down. My videos tend to be a long time. I like to talk about stuff here at the tabletop and then take it out. And there was a couple vids, but I just wanted to go into a little bit more depth because this is such a ubiquitous reel. I looked online at tackletour.com, and you know when they reviewed this reel? They reviewed this reel in 2006. And as I make this video today, it's April of 2018. So right there, this reel has, I think they reviewed it the first year it came out because they were kind of mentioning the previous generation in that review. So assuming it's 2006, guys, you're looking at a reel that has entirely unchanged in 12 years. That's a long time, right? It's a really long time. But that to me inspires confidence. That tells me that this is a reel that they don't need to change. They're selling it. If they weren't selling it, they would either ditch it or retool it or do something, rename it, do something. So they're selling them, and it also tells me that they don't have a lot of problems with it, because if they were getting a lot of them back, they'd be bleeding out money in warranties and in repairs. So it is what I always heard, and maybe you always heard, is it's a very economical reel. This one here, retail, you'll see it most places at $119. I scored this one for $85 shipped off eBay, and if you have just a little bit of patience and you poke around a little bit, that's kind of the price you could find all day long in that kind of $85 to $100 price range. But even if you pay full pop, it's a $120 reel, and it's not bad. But like I said, it's been around a long time, and you know, you could always find some reviews of somebody bashing it or whatever. But on the whole, you know, thousands and thousands of people have been using this reel over the years, and the vast majority of the feedback is very positive. The main thing that I read in all my research on it, was that it's a Calcutta, but just it doesn't come in the machined frame. It comes in a die cast frame. But for people that have both, they've essentially said if you take them apart, the insides are pretty much identical. It's just you're not paying for the machining, which is expensive. Let's take a close look. Here's your handle, guys. And from point to point here, from here to here, you're looking at 85 millimeters. So again, this is an older reel, and at the time they just weren't putting on those longer handles that we see today. We see those 100 millimeter handles and things like that. But I don't have any problem with this, so this is just fine. The knobs, like I was saying, are that Septom, I always think I'm saying that wrong, and maybe I am, Septom material. And you can see it's contoured there, it's beveled. It's not the asymmetric ones that we see on some of the other reels, where it has like a different contour, you know, going along the edge there. But it doesn't matter, it contours well to the thumb. It's a good size. I don't have small hands, and you can see on my thumb there's a lot of purchase area there to get around it. But the main thing is the grip. This is not just a coating. For any of you guys who maybe have never owned a Shimano reel, this isn't just on top. It's not something you're going to wear off over the years. It's a rubber through and through, and it has good qualities. It's very grippy, but it's not sticky, and it doesn't peel or anything like that. And even in the main thing is with these grips is that they perform well when wet. Okay, so it's not quite as grippy obviously as when dry, but you can still get a good purchase on it. And that's important with any reel, but particularly if you're looking at a 300 size reel, almost by default you're saying that I'm targeting bigger species or bigger examples of the fish that I go for. And so this can be critical when you're barreling down, you're really trying to get torque, and these are good knobs. You can see from the side here a lot of different colors employed. If we just consider the aesthetics for a moment, this kind of takes me back to the older Corrados and stuff like that, even though they were green. Shimano's design philosophy back a number of years ago was employing a lot of different colors. Remember those Corrados? They were like that forest green, and then they had like a silver handle. In the cutouts there was gold. There was just a lot of different color combinations going on, and we see that here. in the gold, and then we have like this off kind of lightish or dark gray silver coming into here in this kind of, I don't even know what you would call that, kind of not a goldish, just another hue, kind of like a tanned hue. Then you have the silver of the cast control knob, and you have the chrome here. There's a lot going on, but it just, to me, it's a very sharp looking reel. If aesthetics are important to you, well, my opinion anyway, is it's a sharp looking reel. But let's look at some of the more important mechanical features, guys. It's nice. It has a clicking star drag, and you can hear that. Sounds nice. They put those clicks really close together. No, your ears aren't bad. Just messing around, guys. No, you don't have a clicking star drag. It's a one of the things you give up with a more economical reel. There's no sound on this, but of course you don't need it. Couple things here technical-wise that I like, and I don't know what the correct word is for this. I did hear it one time. I don't like reels that when you have them locked down, that it takes you so many turns. You got to go so many times to relinquish the pressure. I like reels that I can have them locked down, and if something happens and I have to give up some drag, which I probably wouldn't be doing fishing for bass, but if I had to, I want it to be quick. I want to, if I just get to it real quick and that fish is close to the boat, wherever it is, with just like that much of a turn, you've really opened it up a lot. And oh, I'm just noticing my battery. I'm going to change batteries real quick, guys, and we'll get back talking about that drag. Okay, back in action. And yeah, so guys, I think, I guess like torque relinquishment, as I was changing batteries, that was the term that came into my mind as I have tried to talk about this with other people on forums. That's kind of what I think it's best described as, is when you really have it locked down and you could relinquish that pressure very, very quickly by just doing, say, like that much, and now I can reel it from almost a lockdown. I like that. Without actually having any large fish on it, and again, I'm going to be fishing mostly for bass, so almost 100% of the time I'm going to have this pretty much locked down, and my goal is to get them in as quickly as possible. So I don't know that through my testing I'm going to be able to comment on the smoothness of the drag, but what I can tell you here, and I'm sure some of you guys do this as well, is if you put the drag to a kind of a moderate setting, and if you hold the spool such that it can't spin, and you reel, like you're simulating drag being taken, you can generally get a pretty good sense of how smooth that system is. The material of the washer, if they've over or under greased it, and you could just feel if you can turn that crank smoothly without any hiccups. Some of my other reels, even some of my better reels, that's not the case. It's like it jumps. Even though you try to go smoothly, it jumps. This one, with a good amount of pressure here on the drag, I can reel it smoothly, and I don't see why that wouldn't translate to the same kind of performance out on the water in the real world application. The level wind, let's take a quick look at that, is a disengaging level wind, such that when you press the clutch and you want to cast, this is not going to go back and forth as the line is flowing off the spool. When you hit the clutch bar, it's going to stay where it is, similar to all your low profile reels. One other thing, guys, to note, and I'm going to see out in the water how much this affects performance. Notice the edge of the spool. Let me get in here with something. Use a spider comb. Notice the edge front portion of the spool and its distance from the start of the line guide. How close they are. I would put that at probably 2 millimeters, maybe 3. And the reason that that stands out to me is for casting performance. Now again, guys, this reel has been around forever, and one of the things I have not heard is people lamenting that, oh, it's a nice reel but it casts like crap. I haven't heard that. So this probably is not that big of a deal, but just the sheer physics of it, if it so happens that when you go to cast, your line guide is all the way to one side like this, look at how far it can go. As your line evacuates, not when it's coming from here, or when it's coming from this part of the spool, but when it's coming from here, you are making damn near a right angle. That line has to come off here, go almost perfectly perpendicular to it, and then escape. Look at the friction that would be coming along that angle. This is the exact thing like Daiwa tries to alleviate with their T-wing system by opening up that aperture to lessen those sharp angles. And a lot of manufacturers, and I remember Lew's even had an ad campaign where they marketed, they actually touted it as a feature. They moved the level wind forward, because the more the level wind goes forward, of course, the less steep your angle is going to be. But like I said, guys, I've never heard anybody complain about it, but just I've never had a reel where the level wind is so darn close to the spool. Part of that is just the inherent design of any round reel. You can't really flush it out too far, otherwise you lose the round profile. But it really strikes me. I have a couple other nicer round reels, and they seek to mitigate that a little bit by pushing this forward and then opening this up a little bit. So we'll see how the casting performance is out on the water. As you can see, it's a smooth spool, so if you're going to tie braid right to it, you're going to have to put on some backing or some kind of tape or adhesive, or whatever you guys like to do. The reel, let's look at the country of origin, is made in Malaysia. And there you can see the bottom. One of the nice things about this reel is how compact it is, especially, again, I keep coming back to the age, but it is what it is. From a reel from 2006, it sits really low. If you look at the, right here, if you look at the reel foot, and then how much of the reel goes below it, they really tuck that up pretty high. And so even in comparison to any of today's round reels, this sits very low on the rod, and it's surprisingly small and comfortable to pretty much palm for a round reel, especially a 300 size round reel. Add to that the fact that this side here is curved. All these edges are curved. I'm going to roll in, or I may as well just do it now. One of my other reels is at the other end of the spectrum. This is a Daiwa Yoga, a JDM version of the Pluton, and great, absolutely great reel. I love it. But just, it's interesting that when I'm holding it in hand, this kind of squared off angular edge feels much more kind of abrupt and a little bit uncomfortable in hand. Even though it's a little bit smaller overall, it doesn't actually come out as far. Contouring these edges here makes it very, very comfortable. Just figured I'd mention that, guys. There you can see the Cardiff, the 5 bearing, Shimano. Pretty cool design. Again, it very much looks like a throwback when you look at it compared to anything that they're currently putting out, like the Corrado, the Canaan, the Chronarch. Anything new has that very kind of space age and shapely kind of triangular design philosophy. And of course, you wouldn't see that in the round reel, but it looks throwback Shimano, and it's just kind of cool that they're still making it here in 2018 and hopefully beyond. All right, guys, so I think that's pretty much all I want to show you here. Actually, I do have one more thing, and this is a big thing, is the braking system. Just give me a minute, I'm going to open it up. But the braking system, and this is one of the unfortunate drawbacks of this reel, and it's really the one thing that kept me on the fence for years. I wanted to get this, and I was just like, no, no, no. And the thing that put me on the sideline was the fact that you cannot easily get to the braking. You cannot access your brake tabs because they are not on this side. They are on this side. And to get to them, you have to take off this whole cover. But it's really not that bad now that I have it. So let me show you guys and take a closer look. Okay, so to get in here is actually quite easy. You just have these 3 studs here, and they have good knurling on them. You can see you can get a good bite with your hand, although I would recommend tightening them down. You can see that they have a slot to use a screwdriver or something. But the good part is you don't need anything fancy. If you have any change on you, a dime or a penny will go in here, and all you need to do is just loosen them up just the tiniest bit, and you can do the rest by hand. Okay. These are held captive, all right? So when we loosen this all the way, you don't have to worry about losing it. It can't come out this way, which is good. If for some reason you had to get in there while you were on the water. Now, let me, before you even get into your say, and I think a lot of you Shimano guys will agree that when using the older VBS systems, the ones that you couldn't adjust a little wheel on the outside, I think the vast majority of us probably left it on 2 pins and didn't really move it. Maybe on a windy day with light lures, you bumped it up to 3, or maybe if you had no wind or the wind at your back and you were using something really heavy, maybe you went down to 1. But I think the consensus for 90% of the people is you left it on 2 pins. And so that's the reality here, guys, is if you have to, you can adjust it, but particularly on a 300 size reel, you're probably going to be chucking heavy stuff. And I just don't see that you're going to have to go in here to adjust this very often, if at all. But let's take a closer look. So there's your spool. While we're in here, we could see one of the bearings, and of note, which is interesting, you can see that that bearing it's an unshielded bearing. You could go right in there and see all the little balls. Very good for being able to clean it easily, but the flip side is dirt, of course, can get into there a little bit easier as well. So you have one bearing there. You have one bearing here. So if you were to replace this, you would need a special service tool to get out that pin. And there is one more bearing. There's three supporting the spool. There's one right here underneath the cast control knob of the same design. It's that kind of open, unshielded bearing. Okay, so those are three of your four main bearings in the reel. And you can see this side here. There's your main drive gear up at the top. Much smaller than many of the very large gears we have today, particularly in our low profile reels. And also you can see the teeth, no micro module or anything here. It's just traditional, smaller gearing in size and a traditional cut to the gears. Here's the inner racer for the brake pads. I usually recommend going in there with a Q-tip and just wiping that down when you first get it, because usually there's a bit of grease in there. It slows it down a little bit. And that's pretty much it. Unless you're going for a really full service, if you have some problems, this is as far as you need to go to clean out those bearings. You shouldn't have to take this apart too often. So we'll leave that here. And another thing to note, guys, that die cast frame, man, is this light. I can't even tell you, this thing is so light for its size. That's the thing, you look at it and your mind says that this is going to weigh a certain amount, and you pick it up and you're like, geez, that's light. And again, all the more impressive for a reel that came out in 2006. Very cool stuff. Again, this whole reel weighs 8.9, about 9 ounces flat. But looking at that braking system, guys, coming back to that, there you can see your pins. Shimano ships it with 2 brakes in place. That's how mine came. That's how I've always heard of anyone who bought this reel, the way it was shipped and delivered. But you can see how easy it is to get in there. You're probably better off to just check to make sure you do have some brakes on before your first outing. This way you don't risk losing any expensive lures or anything. So that's pretty much it, guys. And the installation is the reverse. Put that in there. Now there is one hiccup to this reel, and I've seen some people complaining about the reel and saying how it's crap and they broke it and it doesn't come apart easy. It says very explicitly in the box, in the instruction manual, it says that when you're putting it back together, you have to have the clutch bar up. Okay, moving the clutch bar up is going to move this little pin up and in the correct position to accept the mating side, the little notch there that would move it up and down. So just make sure you do that, right? One little thing we have to remember, and then you're all good. So we're going to put that in there, find the correct lineup points, and that's it. That's all she wrote. Interestingly, it's even though it's a pain to get to the braking, if you do have to get to it, it's probably the easiest reel in the world to do a full breakdown, to get to the real innards of it. You don't have to go in here with a screwdriver and all that other stuff. You don't have to take off the handle to get into the main stuff. So kind of a catch-22 there. All right, guys, so we're just going to lock it back down and we'll wrap up here at the tabletop. Like I said, good knurling on these. You can grab them very easily. You could probably just fish it like this, but I like to snug them up with that penny. You have little washers in place there, so you're not going to scratch anything, but I wouldn't go too nuts. This isn't an exercise in brute force. Just give them a nice snugging up. It's not going to go anywhere. There we go. So that's it, guys. Oh, one other thing to note. Actually, a couple things before we take it to the water and I give you some thoughts on performance after I've been fishing it. 2 things I'd like to tell you. The first is when I got this out of the box, it was gritty. And it really concerned me. I thought maybe I had a bad one. And it surprised me because whenever I had handled one over the years in Bass Pro Shops or Cabela's or whatever, I was always really amazed at how smooth it felt in hand. I was like, man, those Cardiffs, I see why people like them. They really feel smooth for about $100 reel. Like, man, that thing's like butter. And when I got mine, it was the exact opposite. Like, this wasn't spinning like that. And it just everything felt gritty and harsh. This thumb bar was like hard to press. It was like dragging coming up. Got guys, just so you know, it came heavily greased, and I just worked it in for a while. I was just playing around, you know, watching TV. I was reeling it a lot. I was doing those little pushes like that. I must have pressed this thumb bar, you know, a couple hundred times, just loosening it up, and sure enough, that's all it was. It's just a little heavily greased, and I think the tolerances on this reel, being that's die cast and entry level, are a little bit looser than some of the higher end reels, and you just have to play with it, you know. I mean, you could probably take it out to the water and absolutely do the same thing, but just so you know, if you get one and you take it out of the box and you're surprised and you say, man, this thing feels like crap, give it a little time, you know, play around with it. It will loosen up. Right now, like I said, I haven't even fished it, but just messing around with it here at home over the past week, I'm really impressed with how smooth this thing feels now. Okay, everybody, the last thing I'd like to do is just a couple comparisons. I'm going to compare it against one of my other round reels, totally at the other end of the spectrum. This is the Daiwa Yoga. It's Daiwa's highest end round reel. They don't make this one anymore. They're actually currently coming out with a new version of this. I think it just came out. And so this is at the opposite end, but just in terms of size and profile, I'm going to show you that. But I don't think too many people have this, or even the domestic Pluton version. It was never the most popular reel. I think a lot more of you guys might have something like this, a low profile 300 series. Whether you have the Lexa or, well, those Ebu Garcias have a much more squared off frame. If you guys have some of the older ones, like the green Corrado 301Es, we're going to compare it against that real quick. But before I do that, I just wanted to tell you guys one thing that stood out to me. Quick story. The reason that I really wanted to get the Cardiff was because I have read a couple articles and seen a couple videos here on YouTube from Matt Newman and Paul Bailey, renowned West Coast big bass guys, and really, if you want to, you know, like big bass OGs, right? Coming up in the California swim bait scene. They've been in it for a long time. Of course, Matt Newman is the owner and operator of iRod. Paul Bailey is a guide, and just both of them are just so accomplished. I mean, they've had so many big bass to their name. They obviously know what they're doing, and they've been doing it for longer than most of us have been at it. And the thing that struck me was, and this is a couple years ago, I was reading it, is that Matt was saying that kind of a lot of the West Coast guys in the know, kind of one of the untold little secrets, is that they throw this. And you could see as much. Watch any video where Matt and Paul are fishing for big bass when they're slinging those HUDs, and you'll see them both slinging the Cardiff. And I don't think there's any endorsement there. They just say, basically, you can go up in the lineup. You can go up to the Calcutta, or if you got the money to spend, you can go up into that Calcutta Conquest. And yeah, it'll be smoother and all that stuff. But in terms of performance, it's diminishing returns. You're not gaining anything. There's no fish that you're going to miss on this reel that those other more expensive reels are going to get in for you. It's just a matter of having a nicer product. And when I see guys like that, guys that have the money, they could buy whatever reel they want. And they choose, they elect to get this reel right here, the $100 Cardiff, and they swear by it, and they say that they've been fishing the same one for years and it's reliable. That held a ton of clout for me, and I never forgot that. I heard that a few years ago, and I always wanted to get the Cardiff, and I just kind of sat on the sidelines, and but that really resonated with me, and I just wanted to share that with you guys as well. Is that, you know, people who really make it their business, you know, whether they have a guide service or, you know, whatever it is, in the case of Paul, and they choose this reel, you know, in place of any of the other ones out there. And the one thing that they mentioned as to why was because the unique thing about this, and the thing you lose as soon as you go up into those Calcuttas, is the weight. Again, about 8.9 or 9 ounces in that die cast frame, but you have pretty much the same internals as when you bump up into the $200 Calcutta. And again, guys, from 2006, you know, Shimano is not canceling them because they are reliable, pretty much bulletproof reels, easy maintenance, you know, but you get all that in this large 300 size reel coming in at 9 ounces flat. That's a real rarity, and it really stands out in the market. There's nothing else that quite puts that feature set together of the price, the size, the reliability, and the weight. The Cardiff is very unique in that respect, and I hope they continue this reel for at least a couple more years. I think I'm going to want to pick up another 1 or 2 before they revise it, and maybe they make some changes, hopefully in the right direction. But anyway, little story there, guys. Like I said, my tabletops go a long time. I know some of you love them and some of you hate them. We'll just wrap up here, guys, with the comparison. So here it is next to that. Oh, I know I can see it's a little hard to see here on camera. It's shadowing right there. But from the side profile, the low profile is a little bit lower, but it's really the shape, not so much the absolute height, that makes it a lot more comfortable in hand. If we look at it from this direction, and then we line up those real seats, the real foots rather, you can see that the 13 Fishing actually, get this guy out of the way, you can see he actually comes out a little bit further. But you know, again, it's just the overall shape of the reel. Absolutely, it comes out further here, but it contours steeply there and also steeply there. And so in hand, obviously, this feels a lot smaller than the Cardiff. It's just a different experience, guys. For those of you who have never used a round reel, yeah, it's not uncomfortable. Don't be scared of them. I think a lot of people look at them and just think it's not gonna, you can't palm them like you do a low profile, but still, it just has its own unique feel to it, and you can get a good purchase on it, even though it's a different in-hand experience. And there it is next to the Ryoga or the Pluton, however you want to see it. Very similar in size. So, alright guys, that's it for the tabletop. Let's get this guy out on the water. Going to be putting at least a couple weeks, depends on when I can put all together, maybe even a month or two on it, and I'll report back to you and let you know if anything particularly stands out, either good, bad, or if it's just kind of average and indifferent, if it's not inspiring in any way. I'll let you know what I think.